Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on December 4th, 2023. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Deb Hutton here.
Deborah Meyerson here.
Randy Cassidy here.
Cindy Canarney here. Staff present.
John Zodi with the Hand Department.
Christina Finley, Hand Department.
Anna Hansen, Hand Department.
Colleen Newbill, City Legal.
Holly Warren, Economic and Sustainable Development.
Dee Rosa, Economic and Sustainable Development.
Sean Mia, Economic and Sustainable Development.
Do think we have some staff online. Matt Swinney with the Hand Department is on.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is reading of the minutes for November the 6th, 2023. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deborah Meyerson will make a motion to approve the minutes of November 6th.
Deb Hutton second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, next item on the agenda is examination of claims for November 9th, 2023 for $1,622,193.28 and November 22nd, 2023 for $1,199,855.91. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I'll make a motion to approve both claims as written.
Deborah Meyerson will second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain because I just lost it on my computer. So.
Okay. All right, we have one abstention. Next item on the agenda is examination of payroll registers for November 3rd, 2023 for $37,491.58 and November 17th, 2023 for $37,824.67. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deborah Meyerson will make a motion to adopt the examination of payroll registers as stated.
Deb Hutton second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is a report of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
No formal report tonight. President Canarney Hand has several items of business before the commission. I'm also going to be giving the Hopewell update on behalf of Deb Kuntz, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there a legal report?
No report from legal, thank you.
Is there a treasurer's report?
Let's see, Mr. Underwood on, unless Cheryl, do you have anything from the Controller's office?
No, we do not have anything at this time.
All right, thank you. Are there business development updates?
I just want to share that construction on the tech center is moving along. So John Fernandez and I both participate in a bi-weekly meeting with Weddell Construction, who is our project managers, and they just keep us updated on all the works and the tweaks and things like that. So everything is going on smoothly, and we're on track for to finish construction by the date we want to. So that's great. I also just want to announce that, so as many of you know, Carrie Thompson made her initial series of appointments to her cabinet for next year, and I'm very happy to announce that Jane Coopersmith is going to be the new Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, and we're really excited to welcome her back to the department and do awesome work with her going forward. I'll also be coming to harass you from time to time with fun new arts projects, specifically updates with the Trades District installation, which is the lighty uppy chopsticks that is very beautiful, and also a proposal for a new piece of public art in Phase 1 of Hopewell East.
Can you remind us what the expected completion date is for the tech center? I don't recall.
The tech center is October 24. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next item, is there a Hopewell update?
There is. So as I mentioned earlier, Deb Kuntz is out of town, so I'm going to be giving that for her. So on the development side, we're excited about the continued private development interest in Hopewell. We're planning an in-person real estate update, so you three advisors will be here on December 18th for the final meeting of the year to give the RDC and those watching an update on where their activity is with Hopewell. Just as a reminder, U3 is our consulting organization acting as our owner's representative for the city on the Hopewell project. We just want to say congrats again to the developers and the leads on the project for the core building that was awarded tax credits from IHCDA on November 16th. This will be 38 units of affordable housing. We're really excited about that. That's been a long time coming, as the RDC knows, so that's an exciting development for Hopewell. On sustainability, we are seeking your approval tonight on the green engineer, quote unquote, and so you'll hear more about that shortly. We're actively working with IU Health Legal Counsel on the final land transfer, and we'll have more details for you, I think, at the next meeting as that chugs along as we approach the end of the year. So, and we're in the final review of the garage study as well for the parking garage that will remain on Parcel A, which is where the Legacy Hospital site is. And then the last is that we probably will be bringing a security contract extension to the RDC at the next meeting to extend that through the new year to some degree. I think we'll be getting more details as we go through the next couple of weeks, but that currently ends at the end of the year. So we need to get something that will tide us over, as they say, until we have more of a solid timeline on what needs to be taken care of. So that concludes the update, unless there are any questions.
Dealing with the core building, and since Renshaw has been awarded the 9% credit, what kind of time frame are we looking at? Because since we need to complete the IU Health purchase, and I'm making the assumption that nothing can move forward with Renshaw until such time as that has been acquired and closed, or will there be some consistent or some parallel movement on those two projects at the same time?
That's a good question. So there's sort of a lot of things that need to happen sort of behind the scenes as we approach the redevelopment of the core building, the actual project commencing. So the environmental review that's required by HUD for housing is underway right now. We hope that'll be done near the end of the first quarter of next year, if not before. And that is for the entire parcels 4, 5, and 6, which is Parcel A, basically. I'm not labeling that well, but that area where the hospital was is where that environmental review is underway right now. And then we have to have an agreement for site control that will need to be done that the RDC considered preliminarily in July, sort of that draft when we decided, here's how this is all going to work. You all took action on that in July. Now we're there. We know they've been awarded tax credits, and so we've got to get that agreement that legal is working on and get that negotiated and get site control sort of decided. And then the project, they're hoping to close in summer of next year. So, and then the project would start shortly after closing.
Okay, so somewhere in the next 6 months or so, we'll be looking at trying to get that lined out, and there is no parcelization that's necessary at this point.
I don't have a good answer for you on the parcelization because it depends on where you're talking about. For the core building specifically, I may ask, Heather's not here, but I may have to get back to you on that, Commissioner. Just making sure that I'm not telling you anything wrong on the subdivision, much less the public, so.
Well, just the time frame is what I was looking at. So we're looking at sometime 6 months in order to get that to the point where we can actually see something occurring in order to get these housing units online.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Perfect, thank you.
All right.
And then quick question on the parking garage study.
yes.
Do we have a time frame? Because, just to identify what we think from a dollar standpoint it's going to entail once that report comes in. Will that report be to us by the end of the year, or will that be coming in the?
I can ask, I don't know, but I'll get that timeline for you.
Appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the CDFI Friendly Bloomington Report.
I'm going to share screen.
Hi, everyone. Holly, thanks for your kind words. I'm Jane Cooper-Smith. I'm currently Executive Director of CDFI Friendly Bloomington, which is a small but mighty nonprofit which the Bloomington Redevelopment Commission helped establish. Next slide. We can just skip this one. It's what we're going to talk about, but we don't have a lot of time, so we'll just start the talking part. So what's a CDFI? CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institutions. They are often, but not always, nonprofit lenders with a community development focus. By underserved populations here, we mean really underfunded populations. So CDFIs grew out of the 1977 Community Reinvestment Act, which was the federal government's kind of first efforts of pushing back against redlining. So the work of CDFIs is really closing the wealth gap. It's really helping individuals use access to capital to increase personal wealth and community wealth. So CDFIs really step into that gap. Because this grows out of the 1977 CRA, and banks are, the CRA really addresses the work of banks directly. CDFIs and banks partner very closely together, and that's why, Cindy Canarney, your president, was one of our founding board members in her role here and at First Financial Bank at that time. So we can jump ahead. CDFIs are legal financing entities, so they're backed by the U.S. Treasury. They can take one of 4 shapes. They can be loan funds, which are who we work with mostly, credit unions, banks, or other, which is really venture capital and some other kind of different versions. You can scroll through. And then this is kind of a snapshot of the industry. There are 1,487 CDFIs currently managing $452 billion in assets. So this is a drop in the bucket for banks, but this is really an enormous amount of money that can have a pretty huge impact on our community. You can see that we have 83% of borrowers qualify as low income, 61% are people of color, which I'm going to work to get better statistics on that and break it down a little more. 47% are women and 28% are rural. So they're really all across the country. CDFIs grew in the second tranche of PPP funding. If you remember that first round, it was woefully mismanaged and got into the hands of the wrong people. So the feds partnered with CDFIs to make sure that it was properly managed and really getting to businesses in need. Why CDFI friendly? So why did we bring our new model to Bloomington? So we're not a CDFI. We are a lean nonprofit that works to network nationally with potential CDFI partners that can lend here. So it's figuring out, of those 1,487 lenders, who can lend in Bloomington or the uplands, and how do we get them here? And then networking locally to find out what projects are unfunded, what individuals are not able to get financing from banks, who's falling through the cracks of credit, really, who's boxed out, and how do we close that gap? So pre-2018, from 2008 to 2018, we determined there was $5 million of investment, you can scroll ahead, in our area. Oh, this is our service area. It's basically the uplands, you can scroll through. And then supporting organizations. Annual operating support comes from German American, Old National, First Financial, and the city of Bloomington. Founding funders, I guess I won't read everyone since I know we're short on time, but just the big picture here is this is a community effort. There are a lot of people partnering that understand the need that we're trying to address. So you can jump ahead. Key functions, networking, like I said, identifying local projects, providing technical assistance. A lot of times people are boxed out of credit because they don't have a lot, like high level of financial literacy. And what I'm finding, what Dee and I have talked about a fair amount, is how it's hard for people to even get good TA from our identified TA providers if they don't have baseline level of knowledge. And so we're finding that some of our CDFI partners are really able to meet people where they are. And then remove barriers to capital via our Capital Enhancement Fund. So the RDC's participation is related to the Capital Enhancement Fund. So we're actually lending RDC dollars out into the community. This is the makeup of our Capital Enhancement Fund. $1 million from you all, $1 million from the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, and then a $2.25 million participatory line of credit. So the $2 million is obligated to the city of Bloomington, and then the $2.25 million can go elsewhere out in the county and in the uplands region. You can go ahead.
So it's not specific to the city?
No, I mean, part of it is, but we manage that on the back end. So on the public facing side, we're called CDFI Friendly Bloomington, but we're really serving a pretty broad footprint. And just by default, most of our activity is here in town. Requirements of our capital fund, we're only lending in partnership with CDFIs. Loans go through a CDFI Friendly Investment Committee review process and recommendation process. For the RDC funds, investments, this is per the operating agreement, investments have to be made in the TIF, and they must be related to affordable housing development. And then those funds also require a 50% match for overall capital. And that is sort of, when we were establishing the funds, RDC and BUEA were both interested in supporting us, but neither organization wanted to be the only funder. And so that's what that is related to. The BUEA funding, investments must be made in the enterprise zone. It's not restricted to housing, but it is restricted to the priorities of the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association. And we are applying that lens on our end, so we're not taking loans back to you all for approval, but we're using the priorities established in those operating agreements. And then the participatory line of credit, anywhere in the uplands, Morgan and Jackson counties. Okay, here we get into the statistics a little bit, or the impact. So from 2008 to 2018, we had $5 million of CDFI investment that we could track in our region. And then post 2019 and beyond, we've had $25.7 million in new CDFI capital investment, $58.1 million in total project investment, 17 permanent jobs created, 34 unique investments, 9 participating CDFIs, and then 357 affordable housing units created and retained. And that unit number is high for a couple of different reasons, but I'll just say the metric that we were aiming for in the beginning was $50 million of CDFI investment by now, and we've only met that by half, and I think that is in part because it's a new model, and in part because we established this nonprofit right before the pandemic hit. Yeah.
Jane, for that slide, the upper half there.
Yeah.
Is that in 1 year and 5 years?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's 2019 through today.
So 4-ish years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And then current pipeline, this is just to say, you know, the pipeline doesn't look huge. The projects are really hands-on, but we do have quite a few live ones. And of these housing-related applications, all of them would tick the RDC in the TIF requirement. So it's kind of exciting to see that stuff moving along. And the next slide, how to support us. I mean, you're doing it by listening today and by talking to me. Mainly, I think just send me projects that are stuck anywhere in their development process, and I can help creatively, for now, for the next few weeks, look for solutions for them. And I guess I'll address that too. CDFI Friendly is working to appoint an interim director as I transition back over to the city, and they have some great people who are potentially interested, and then they'll conduct a search for a new executive director. But yeah, any questions?
Wow. How do we get the information out to those individuals so they know, so we can get this moving on that? I mean, this
For
is
potential borrowers?
Potential borrowers, so they're able to look at how we do it. I mean, this is a great
Yeah.
example of what you brought
Well,
through in a public meeting.
I
but
think
just-
in February, we're going to have one really great, this would be for D, CDFI, that's called Allies for Community Business, based out of Chicago. They want to do a technical assistance session where they would be giving information about their products, and then also, I think they want to come here and do it in person and actually work with potential borrowers. They're a really great CDFI. They do ITIN lending, so they don't, you know, they have more flexible documentation requirements. All their materials are available in Spanish language format. So I think that stuff's going to start happening, and then we're working with a marketing consultant to help get our message out a little more broadly. But yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, the funding opportunities are there for small businesses
Yes.
in order to do it. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of getting them the technical assistance they need to start
Yeah,
putting that out.
and some of our community partners understand, Cindy can attest to this, the people who get it really get it and are sending people our way frequently, and then other people are a little slower to see like how, like what the gap is. Some people just are less aware of the gap, and I think just continuing to talk to more people and then show the results helps make it clear.
Yeah, 'cause very helpful in regards to it, because quite frankly, I didn't understand exactly what
Yeah,
it was.
well,
so.
it's a new model, so it's definitely, yeah, it's different.
I think
Thank
it
you.
really provides another significant arrow in the community quiver to help get things done that may not have gotten done otherwise. And I think Jane's done a great job of leading the effort. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Cindy. All right.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to new business. First item is annual informative presentation, and welcome back. Good to see you again.
Thank you for having me again. I'm glad I could be of more use this time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt Frishy. I'm with 3D Financial Group. I'm here on behalf of the City of Bloomington Redevelopment Commission to complete your guys' annual TIF impacts presentation. We have invited all overlapping units to attend this meeting. Those were sent to them via certified mail, those letters 10 days prior to this meeting. So we did get that satisfied, and they have been invited. Whether or not anyone's attending, our obligation is to invite them, and then we can proceed with the presentation. So, John, if you want. So as I stated, tonight we will be completing the final reporting requirement for Bloomington RDC for the year 2023, which requires us to present our TIF impact to our overlapping units. So basically saying, what is the impact of us harboring this assessed value within a TIF allocation area on overlapping units, okay? Go ahead. So this next slide really shows a breakdown of the two main allocation areas. And I know there's been some consolidation with the larger one over the years, but you'll see those two allocation areas broken down with the creation year and their expected expiration year, as well as their 2023 incremental assessed value. So that is all the assessed value that each one of those areas is generating, assessed value, not revenues, that those areas are generating for 2023, totaling $845,369,977.
Question real quick in
Yes,
regards
yes,
to
sir.
well, since we consolidated the TIFs back 10 years ago.
Yep.
Why was North Kensington left out? Was that something that was done after the fact, or is it just because it's such a small area? That
Yeah, I'm not positive as far as the methodology or why that was done at the time. We could probably find out. I know Jeff Underwood may have a little bit of flavor to add there. I know he's been here quite some time. Do you have
Yeah, I
anything?
can inquire. I do not know the history behind it either. Yeah.
Okay.
For at least the last 3 years, it's been that way. I'm not
Oh, it's
sure
been, yeah, for several,
how
yeah.
long it's been that way.
And I think we actually have I can get you kind of the date that it actually consolidated. We can go from there if you'd like.
And it actually gets reported separately in the state reports that go up.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just asking, as
Yeah.
we consolidated our TIFs at one point in order to take care of Switchyard Park and a couple others. I didn't realize that North Kensington was left out of that.
That one was left separate, and it could have been due to outstanding obligations at the time as well, depending on if bonds were issued at the time. So, yep. So really, I like to include this slide as just kind of an informative refresher as far as how TIF works. It's really important when talking about what does TIF impact overlapping units to reiterate the fact that when a TIF is established, we're not taking any assessed value from any overlapping units, right? We are creating an area that then we hope to drive development within that area, and we're going to capture those developments as opposed to capturing assessed value that was already there. So the key there is all overlapping units at the time of establishment will continue to capture revenues based on the assessed value of those parcels at the time of creation. At the end of the life of the TIF, you'll see all that assessed value goes back to those base units where they can recoup that assessed value.
So if we look at that consolidated TIF that expires in 2029.
Yes.
So given, 23, in 6 years, the incremental AV of 840 million will actually then be divided up amongst
Correct.
all of the individuals, and then, like, if we're doing a 20-year bond issue, does that impact our fiscal abilities?
Yeah, so,
or-
and that's the key to keeping, it's always imperative to keep in mind what is our runway for these revenues, right? We don't want to go out today, issue a bond, and have a 20-year term when we know that our TIF is expiring in less than that, right? That's going to inhibit our ability, and bondholders wouldn't like the fact that we're issuing an obligation that we don't have necessarily revenues to repay that, right? So the expiration date is definitely something to keep in mind when looking at debt. Absolutely. All right, go ahead. This is just a quick snapshot as of revenues and expenditures as of 9/30 when we received the last financials prior to this report. So you'll see the beginning year balances, the revenues and expenditures to date as of that time, and the balance as of that time as well, okay? As far as future and current plans, I know one of the larger ones that we were told to kind of include on here was the Hopewell project. I believe you guys are all apprised of kind of that project, so no need to go into any detail on that one. So we can keep going on. This slide, really just the setup slide for the next two slides we're going to be discussing, and really the purpose of this is to kind of walk you through the task that we've been asked to present upon, right? Legislators, when they passed this bill a couple years ago, I believe it was 2018 when it was actually passed. I could be wrong there, but regardless, when they passed it, that they essentially asked us to enter into a time machine, assume that all development that has occurred would already and still occur, and then what were to happen if we were to tomorrow release all of the assessed value in all those allocation areas? What would happen to taxes, revenues, and tax rates, right? So all of that, keeping in mind, right, we're going to assume that all of that is still the case, and what we do is we've created a database based on a study we did in 2018 when we really quantified what is the true TIF impact, right? There is, in our minds, releasing a lot of assessed value doesn't necessarily mean there's a dollar for dollar correlation on the amount of revenue that you guys receive as a RDC as opposed to those overlapping units. There is a margin of revenue that's created because of TIF and how taxes work in the state of Indiana. We have circuit breakers, very unique in that state of Indiana. And we also have, in circuit breakers, I mean tax caps. And then also we're also a max levy state. So we're constrained on how much we can grow our revenues on an annual basis by our max levy, and what the state says is your approved growth quotient of that max levy from a year-to-year basis, okay? All that said, we can go on to the TIF impact chart.
Can I just ask you to go back a
Yes,
couple
ma'am.
slides on financial position?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have that data as of year-to-date now, as opposed to 9/30?
I don't, but we can get it.
Okay, I'd be interested in seeing that.
Okay. Yeah, and I know we got those documents from Cheryl, so she should have all that information as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
If you could send it to all the commissioners.
Okay, so this TIF impact chart, this is a breakdown of each of the overlapping units that are impacted by the allocation areas that you guys hold. And by that I mean each one of those parcels, if you have a parcel that is in, we have at least one TIF parcel that has assessed value that is in each one of these overlapping units, or that these overlapping units have some purview over, okay? So what this really shows is if we were to release all the assessed value within our allocation areas, the estimated circuit breaker impact to the city of Bloomington is $1,784,343. As a percent of the total impact, that is almost 56% of the total impact, which is, as you see at the bottom, all those impacts added up. The total impact is $3,191,802. Now, I'm not going to read through every single number on here, but and for any overlapping units that may be attending via Zoom, this presentation is available. We can definitely get you guys an electronic copy, answer any questions that you may have. The key here to keep in mind is, and the reason we label it circuit breaker impact, as I said, it's not additional revenues that these units would be receiving. The city of Bloomington would not receive almost $1.8 million in additional revenues if we were to release all the assessed value. And that's because, as I stated, their max levy can only grow by a state-approved growth quotient from this year to next year. So that state-approved growth quotient from this year to next year is 4%. So that means that the state of Bloomington can only raise their max levy by 4% from 23 to 24. So what that means is if our assessed value were to grow by 10%, our max levy revenues can still only grow by 4%. So what does that do? All that means is that our tax rate would drop, okay? No additional revenues necessarily received, but our tax rate would drop, okay?
So is that, negative consequences for Bloomington then?
Not necessarily. The circuit breaker that the city experiences is a little bit higher as a result of TIF and having TIF AV, yes. However, as you see on the chart here, like I said, if we were to release all that assessed value, those units, not revenue dollars, but a circuit breaker reduction amount, the total impact, we're projecting at almost 3.2 million. Alternatively, because that assessed value is within an allocation area, you guys are able to collect $15.6 million in TIF revenues in 2023.
As opposed to the 3 million.
As opposed to the 3,191. Exactly.
That's the difference, the percentage cap between the levy and the circuit breaker would
Correct.
dictate us would lose 12 million bucks.
So that's, yeah, exactly.
Dollars to community investment dollars.
Correct.
That could be utilized based on what our maximum state legislation has
Exactly.
required.
So with the use of TIF, you guys are able, as you just said, able to collect $12,481,618 more than you otherwise would have collected if all of that assessed value was amongst the overlapping units, okay? And that TIF margin number at 80 cents, and you can slip to the next slide as I talk about this, what that really states is for every dollar that you guys receive, 80 cents of that dollar would not have existed if that assessed value was not inside a TIF. Very, very impactful numbers, and really just goes to show the benefit of using TIF in the state that we live in, right? The way taxes work, the way assessed values work, it's so imperative to use whatever, and you used the perfect phrase earlier, quiver you have, or arrow you have in your financial quiver to maximize the amount of revenues that you can put back into your community and redevelop the area. This is the best way to do it through the use of TIF.
So utilization of this of the TIF additional revenues of the 12 million, such, we're looking at it and having discussions amongst, you know, the RDC or any of these other organizations that are impacted by the increase in the assessed AV.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually help do anything in the solid waste or the library. Anything,
Absolutely.
and still be able to enhance the community based upon these ones that are could potentially say, well, you're taking assessed value.
Absolutely.
We take assessed value, but what's the benefit that we're seeing by capturing that 12 million where we'd really only be getting 3?
Correct.
So it's a good discussion item to have.
Oh,
amongst-
absolutely, and I think that you'd be hard pressed to find someone that could say that the use of these TIF funds have not helped those overlapping units as well in some way, shape, or form. Okay.
Well, not just the overlapping units, but surrounding
Absolutely.
areas as well.
Absolutely.
We've approved many projects that would enhance those areas.
Agreed. So with that, that wraps up the TIF impact presentation that we're required to present on an annual basis for you guys. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, like I said, if anyone is on the call, wasn't able to attend today, we're more than happy to share the version of the presentation and answer any questions that you guys may have. Okay?
So, big question. How do you get hold of you?
I
Because it's
have
not on here.
I have cards. I have cards.
So that way, you know, if we have questions.
I can
we
just
can-
leave a stack of them here,
That'd be
if that
great.
works.
I appreciate it. Just
Anyone has a question?
looking
please
at
reach
that
out.
from this great presentation in regards to it, but if there are some other underlying questions, because out in the community at times, we do get questions about, God, they're tiffing it, they're taking our assessed value. This is a perfect example in
Yeah.
regards to say, no, we're enhancing the area as a whole.
Absolutely, and the other, if you wanted to go a step further, the other benefit that you're doing by harboring this assessed value at the time of expiration, all of that assessed value, like I said, will go back to those base units. What will that do? That will lower their tax rates, which gets them, now, we're not gonna sit here and like try to quantify exactly what the tax rates would be post expiration, because we don't know what's gonna happen in the next 10 years, right? But you're gonna be lowering tax rates to the point where most likely a lot of those units, as I said, will experience less circuit breaker. So the more assessed value you harbor within these allocation areas, the more benefit they'll get at the end.
Excellent, thank you.
So
Appreciate it.
we have a question on the chat. And if you want to read that, but I'll read it out loud for everyone's benefit. If the tax rate drops and given the max levy amounts, would the amount of property tax paid by property owners in the city of Bloomington decrease at the time of the TIF expiration? And I think you.
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on that, but the only way taxpayers themselves would experience a lower tax bill is if that tax, if the amount of assessed value released were to drop the tax rate to such a significant amount that they'd be below their cap, right? Most property tax, single family residents are capped at 1%, right? Any amount above that, they're not paying anyways. That is the circuit breaker amount that I'm saying those units would experience circuit breaker reduction because of a lower tax bill dollar amount. So it's very, very unlikely that the amount of assessed value release would be significant enough to the point where it would drop rates below 1. But I guess there is a scenario if we harbored enough assessed value at the end of the life of the TIF. But like I said, taxpayers most likely would not see any difference between those. They would just see it from a rate perspective, not necessarily a dollar perspective. Okay.
All right, thank you for the question on chat. Any other
everyone.
questions from commissioners? All right, we're moving on. Thank you very much for coming again.
Of course, have a good one.
Appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 23-98, Agreement with the Green Engineer for Environmental Services at Hopewell. Director Zodi, would you like to speak to this?
Turn it over to Economic and Sustainable Development. Sean Mia is here to present on that.
Okay.
I believe I have a presentation that was provided. Do you have the presentation?
Oh,
Or-
no, I thought you were gonna share
Okay,
it.
I
Yeah.
will share. Okay.
If you just share your screen.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm Shania. I'm the Assistant Director of Sustainability for ESD for the City of Bloomington, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak tonight about Lead for Neighborhood Development certification for Hopewell. I'm going to start off by talking about our climate action plan. Our goal is to be carbon neutral by 2050. That means that we need to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions every year by 2050. This will help us to slow or reverse climate change, which causes more frequent and intense floods and storms, extreme heat, poor air quality, vector-borne diseases, and so on. I've lived in Bloomington for more than 20 years, and I have experienced myself these things happening here in Bloomington. We had the massive flood a few years ago. We had a derecho event this past summer. We've had more hotter summers, and we experienced Canadian wildfire smoke this past summer as well. So as you can see, climate change is impacting our economy, our health, infrastructure, emergency services, and so on. So to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, we need to invest in energy efficiency, waste reduction, renewable energy, electrification, and many more things. So one of the best tools that we have is called Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED. Whenever developers are developing on our city, that's a great tool for them to use. It's the most widely used green building rating system in the world. It provides a framework for healthy, efficient, and cost-saving green buildings. And LEED certification is a globally recognized symbol of sustainability achievement and leadership. And so as you can see there, there's several different levels of certification, from being certified through silver, gold, and platinum. So whenever a developer is pursuing LEED certification, there are several key areas that they are measured on. The first one is the impact on the site, how water efficient the buildings are, how energy efficient they are, the materials that they select, and also indoor environmental quality. So I've provided a list here of some buildings here in Bloomington that have used LEED certification. The building that you're sitting in now is the Shower City Hall. It was LEED recertified in 2019 as a gold level. So LEED is nothing new here in Bloomington. And so I'm here tonight to talk about LEED for neighborhood development. And so LEED, it takes the certification concept beyond individual buildings and applies it to the whole neighborhood. It's engineered to inspire and help create better, more sustainable, well-connected neighborhoods, focusing on high levels of walkability, a sense of place, and social cohesion. It places a strong emphasis on project location and linkages, as well as the overall neighborhood design. It encourages strategies that conserve resources and protect natural areas. And because we are asking some of the developers to achieve LEED Silver on their vertical buildings, LEED for neighborhood development, it magnifies the benefits of that because it's a neighborhood scale, and it approaches the project through a comprehensive and holistic lens. In 2022, we hired Guidon to complete a study. They completed a sustainability alignment workshop with city staff, and it was decided that LEED for neighborhood development certification would reduce the burden and cost for developers to attain LEED Silver certification on their vertical buildings. So whenever a developer is working within a LEED for neighborhood development site, they automatically get 16 scorecard credits on their LEED Silver certification application. So LEED for neighborhood development, it provides an opportunity to create a neighborhood for tomorrow that serves Bloomingtonians for generations to come. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to develop an entire neighborhood as sustainably as can be. And so I worked with Deb Kuntz. We issued an RFI. We had 4 companies that submitted proposals. We chose to interview 2 of them, and we chose the green engineer because of their experience in lead for neighborhood development, the depth and breadth of their experience, and the quality of their proposal. Also during the interview, they were really able to answer a lot of our questions about the lead and D process. And so because of their experience, they were able to provide those answers. And so we have the green engineer here with us tonight. We have Carrie Havey and Kelsey Powers with us. They were founded in 2005. They are based in Concord, Massachusetts. They are an employee-owned company. They're also a certified benefit corporation, which means that their mission goes beyond profit. They've completed over 300 LEED certified projects, 18 of those achieving LEED Platinum certification. And again, they have LEED for neighborhood development project experience. And so I just wanted to show you a couple of projects that they've worked on. This is Clipper Ship Wharf. It's located in East Boston. It's a mixed-use development with residential, retail, public, and recreational spaces. There's another building. It had 7 acres and 4 buildings, and it is going for silver certification. The next one is the Talbot Norfolk Triangle. It's located in Boston, Massachusetts. It's a comprehensive sustainable development initiative spanning 13 historic blocks, and it provides affordable housing that is sustainable and energy efficient. And so for the contract, which was the draft was given in your packet, for Hopewell East, Phase 1, the general consulting fee is $31,500. For LEED and D certification project management, it's $89,000. Developer project support, $19,500. Reimbursable allowances, $8,180 for a total of $148,180. This does not include the LEED and D registration fees. And so, thank you, and please let me know if you have any questions about LEED and D or the contract, and Carrie and Kelsey can also help to answer questions.
I'd be curious to understand a little bit more about how LEED ND impacts the public space development of a place like Hopewell, because certainly I understand the support it can provide for developers of individual projects within the area, but just interested in how, especially in terms of things that may come back to the RDC that are specific for LEED ND. So just wanted to know a little bit more about that if that's available.
Okay. Carrie or Kelsey, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can jump in there. So LEED and D really focuses, as was previously mentioned, we focus heavily on the site and location. There are a lot of credits that are, related specifically to the buildings inside, and that does benefit the developers who will eventually work on the project. But the site really focuses, we're focusing on bikeability, walkability, how people who will work and live in that space, how they'll enjoy that space for years to come. So are there green spaces to enjoy? Are there, is it walkable? Is it affordable? Is it going to be a space that the community that we're developing for, will it work for that area?
Can you just maybe provide a little bit more about specifications that would be examples? Like, is there a certain ratio of green space to built environment, or, just width of sidewalks, infrastructure? Just trying to get a sense of what the actual application looks like on the ground for LEED ND, especially, again, applying to the public space component.
Yep, so there are going to be prerequisites for LEED ND, so those are going to be requirements. Every project that wants to achieve any level, thank you for the scorecard, that's great, helpful reference. Any project that wants to achieve any level of certification has to meet the prerequisites, and then to hit your certification level, whether it be certified silver, gold, or platinum, you're going to work within these credits. And so for silver, we'll do an assessment of our own. I know that there has already been this kind of overarching assessment, but then as the development moves forward, look and see let's see, we can look at access to quality transit. We assess not only what's existing, but are there going to be transit stations developed as part of the Hopewell development down the line? Are there, going to be, let's see, I don't think we have any issues with water and wetlands. So like those are points that will automatically be picked up just based on the site and location alone. And so a lot of those will will be early on kind of decided upon and not necessarily changed based on the development. But then if you scroll down neighborhood pattern and design, this is going to be a lot more focused on how the city would like people to experience, and we can kind of hone in on different credit categories and so access to civic and public spaces. Are there going to be spaces for outdoor movies? Are there going to be spaces for yoga? Things like that. Those are all accounted for in this section. And so it really is it's highly dependent upon those kind of development decisions that we don't actually necessarily know too much about quite yet. So I can't speak too much about which points would be picked up here.
And Kelsey, if I can just
Absolutely.
piggyback off that. One thing to think about is, as she was describing, a lot of these credits have multiple options. And as you can see, there's a total available of 110 points, and for silver, we only need about 50, 55, so about half of those points. So there's a lot of flexibility here, which really works to our advantage. Every project is going to be different. Not every credit is going to be a good fit for every project. And with all of these options, and with the options even within each credit for different tiers and different levels of points, we have a lot to work with. So it's hard to give you, this credit has this answer, because it's a pretty loose fit sort of rating system, which gives us a pretty broad spectrum of ways in which we can achieve a sustainable project. So I think that's one of the real benefits of this rating system. There's a lot to choose from.
Can I just ask real quick? Go ahead, Deb. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
How do you guys anticipate, or how have you worked with U3 in the past? And tell me about other projects that you've done in this area and developers that you've worked with, regionally, I suppose. I guess I'm just trying to understand why we have to have a separate consultant on this particular topic. Certainly I see the value of LEED, et cetera, but I'm wondering, did U3 not offer this in part of our discussion with them?
That was that question directed at?
I had lots of questions in there, but I'm just curious. We have a lot of consultants, and I'm just wondering why we saw the need to segment out this one.
Sure. U3, I don't believe, offers this particular type of service, or we didn't scope it with them. They were looking to provide, we were needing an owner's representative to help on facilitating the deals and developments that would go in. This is a very specified service as I understand it, and that would explain why we didn't use U3. I'll let Sean maybe or Holly talk about the other side of it. I will say also, prior to Ms. Warren becoming interim director and Sean coming on staff, I was here for a little bit of the guide-on engagement in 2022, and as we look at Hopewell development, this has been one of the other tenets. So affordability, sustainability, and design, and so the specificity with which sustainability efforts are worth engaging, which they are. I think we needed this specialized service, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, it is a specialized service. So these are LEED accredited professionals who have experience in these specific types of designs. That it's a neighborhood-wide design, and so it will take a lot of time and effort to decide on which of these scorecard credits we want to pursue, and work with developers in making sure that we get there. And so we're going to have to work with our design team pretty closely to decide on which scorecard credits we want to pursue.
I'm just trying to think logistically. So developers would have to go through the RFI, RFP process, and then when does this consultant kind of get involved with those developers and their bids or their project presentations?
So the sooner that we can get our scorecard finalized, we can present that to the developers and say, this is what we're pursuing, this is what we want you to include in your designs. The sooner that we can bring them on and get that scorecard finalized and presenting it to the developers and working with them. So the developers will be working on their own sustainability LEED certification for their vertical buildings. And so we need the green engineer to look at those designs and making sure that they are proposing their designs to meet our scorecard.
So the RFPs that have been, that are in review currently for 8, 9, and 10, how, I mean,
They've
would it,
been made aware that this is coming.
I was gonna say, is it anticipated that they would have to go back to the drawing board based on the outcome of some of these recommendations?
Even some projects, LEED and D projects have been certified up to 75% of construction completion. So it's not, we're not behind the ball, we're not too late here in the game. We have time to work with the developers and work together on a good.
Cause I think a lot of the developers have already spent a lot of time and treasure getting their proposals to a certain point, and we're looking at dollar amounts of those proposals that could potentially change depending on the outcome of those recommendations or going through this LEED process with our consultant, correct? Am I thinking about that right?
I don't think they're at the point in their designs yet that we would substantially affect their proposals and their designs. I don't think they're at that point yet.
Two questions. Going from what you were asking, does this scorecard, because it's neighborhood development in the whole space, not just what is built vertically, also apply to our developers who are, like in Hopewell East, already constructing the baseline infrastructure, setting up the streams and the water and the roads and the sewers and stuff? Is that affecting those developers too, not just the building developers, but the landscape or the spatial infrastructure? And the same for Hopewell on First Street, putting the street in and setting it up. Is this going to be scorecards for them too?
I don't think we're at any point in the construction where it's too late to start to incorporate sustainable design.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one question. The second would be for Kelsey and Carrie. In your experience in the past, how many projects have you worked on when they've aimed for one of the 4 degrees, platinum, gold, silver, say, but in the end came down a step because of circumstance, choices, money, any variety of reasons? Aimed for 1, had to come down a level, or even 2 levels.
Yeah, well, we've seen it go both ways. We've seen surprises where they thought they were just gonna be certified and we're able to push them up to silver.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're right, we've seen it go the other way where they're aiming for gold. And then when we get, feet on the ground and we're looking at the scorecard and we're looking at budget, we might have to bump down. And that's fine, we're always happy to adjust based on costs and the feasibility of the project. But I really think that at this scale, we've got a lot to work with here. We could easily get that certified level, and certainly I think silver is on the table as well. So, but I mean, it's a good question. We have to be thinking about that for sure.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So in the timeline, as far as the overall Hopewell budget, the timeline says that the lead for neighborhood development consultant would be 2023 to 2024, and this is a 5-year contract. So is there gonna be additional costs beyond this contract? Or is 5 years, we feel like we're gonna be, that's plenty of runway to complete their work?
We felt like this initial contract should just be a 2-year contract, because it is such a large project.
I thought I saw 5 years in here.
December 31st of 2025 is what is in our
Okay.
scope of services timeframe.
So it's just a 2-year contract. After 2 years, we'll see where we're at. We want to have this first phase with a good scorecard development finalized, and then if we like how this process has worked, we can extend it to the other 2 phases. So we're hoping for LEED and D for all 24 acres, but we don't want to be too ambitious here at the get-go. first phase, 2 years, and then we'll see where we're at.
Is there a specific geographic area that qualifies for lead ND in terms of like how many blocks, or, you know, we have the certain phases that are currently being, again, the infrastructure being developed, but just what qualifies as making it a neighborhood within this larger, if, you know, if it's not, let's say, carried out to the entire 25 acres?
Kelsey and Carrie, you can help me on this, but I think that we can work with the U.S. Green Building Council, who is the one who managed the LEED certification. They will work with a city or whatever development project to define what the boundaries are of that project. So I don't think there's a set number of acres or anything like that, but the boundaries of the project is well defined of what's being certified.
Thanks.
Can Carrie or Kelsey, can you guys speak to, and just quickly, developers that you've worked with, and how do you add value to them in their process? If you could just briefly walk me through that.
Sure, yeah, we work with developers all the time. Sometimes we're hired directly by the developer, and then sometimes we're hired by the architect and working alongside the developer. But, you know, we're very used to that process, and, you know, we know that, that in working with the developer, you know, we need to educate them first off. That's a big part of what we do is educating on the rating system, the sustainability features, what we think is feasible for the project, and then we have a back and forth. We like to start out with that education with a kickoff, a charrette, where we really talk through the whole process kind of high level with the developer. And then, you know, after reviewing any existing plans or drawings, we can start to kind of hone in on specific credit categories and work with them to see what's feasible and what's not. So we do this all the time. We're certainly happy to work with developers. We're very used to that. I don't know, Kelsey, if you have anything to add, but.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think just, you know, we tend to bring definitely more technical expertise and reality to a lot of the goals that developers tend to bring to a project. And in this case, it'll be nice working on behalf of the city. So having those goals in place, and, you know, we're not necessarily, we never are going point chasing. We really try to stick to our goals and our values, and there's really no cutting corners regardless of who we're working for. So, you know, we'd be excited to be representing the goals of the city, and then working with the developer to, yeah, like Carrie said, educate them, but also work with the realities of the site and their experience as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Next. Question in regards to, we didn't include the lead ND registration cost. What is that?
It's about $28,000.
Okay. So that's on top of it. And what we're looking at the present moment is a $148,000 contract for a 2-year time frame. Is that correct statement? Okay. And then the benefit of this, that we look from a developer standpoint, they automatically get 16 credits if this is continued forth. So if it's certified, each developer of every building will automatically have 16 credits, of which then they will have to hit 34 more credits in order to hit silver. So with that, that's the overall benefit. Now the question I have, which unfortunately I don't think we can define right now, with our 2 proposals we have for 8, 9, and 10, of how we would identify how many of these buildings, homes, and residences would be applicable to this. Because as we look at this cost that we're at, from each building itself would have a lead 16 credits. Now, when we start looking at the affordability end of it, in order to get to our sustainable lead, which we want to do, we want sustainability, we also want affordability. So when we're trying to do this, while I understand the scorecard and it seems as though the neighborhood thing, it would be divisible, this 148,000 would be divisible by the total number of units that we have. Is that a correct statement? On the entire site, but only with working with those developers in this 2-year time frame. And as we've all looked at, this project could extend well past that due to the number of things that have to be taken into consideration, the streets, the additional funding that have to be. So while I'm very supportive of the sustainability and the organizational aspect of putting it together ahead of time. I think with not having the developers on board, or even saying upfront in our proposals that we need you to hit the lead thing. We have that ability as we negotiate with the developers to say, this should be incorporated into your buildings, but looking at it how it goes from the affordability standpoint. So from perspective of what I'm seeing, the scorecard, the 16 credits for each individual one is a phenomenal thing. But I think we're a little ahead of ourselves on this since we've still got interviews with the developers, and we still have some financial functions to do. From a sustainability standpoint, no question, giving a developer 16 credits ahead of time is a wonderful thing to do. Spending it right now at the present moment seems a little ahead of the or cart ahead of the horse, or however you put that. Not trying to be negative. Love sustainability, want it all to be LEED if at all possible. We just have to look at how we look from an affordability standpoint in this development, because this is a long-term, highly costly process that us as a community is going through. And
But isn't it, being devil's, I think I'm being devil's advocate, if I say it correctly. Hasn't part of this conversation also been that we're slow? We're not ahead of ourselves, we're behind the 8 ball in not being able to present a scorecard of our liking to any developer, whether it's for the infrastructure or a vertical building. We don't have it ready yet, and we have some of both moving ahead. So we're behind the 8 ball rather than ahead.
well, the question I have on that is the LEED standpoint that we're looking for, that's the neighborhood LEED that gives us 16 points. So that is overall, no matter what the buildings are, but we're also looking at a 2-year time frame here. So when I'm evaluating what our cost per section is and cost overall, it could extend itself, 2-4 years. So this could be a $350,000 or $300,000 thing in a 4-year period. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of when we apply it accordingly as we have these discussions with our developers. Because we know we're not going to develop. We know we've got parties that we need to have involved. So
I just have a few things to say. So for LEED and D, we only need one building within that boundary that's LEED Silver certified, only one building. We don't have to say that all of them have to be LEED Silver certified, just one. And then for the developers, from my understanding is that whenever we go for LEED Silver certification, it only increases cost by 2%, and there's a 4-year return on investment. And with the current IRA tax incentives, it can drop that in half. So, I know that we're out of our comfort zone. We're not used to LEED. We're not used to LEED and D, but it's a really
it's a good thing. I just don't know enough about LEED and D to make an educated guess. LEED, I'm fairly well versed in regards to what it takes, and the only thing that ever gets in the way of being able to do it is the financial affordability, because nobody wants to build an unsustainable building. But they also have to hit our price points as we set and look at where, at the present moment, we're the highest cost in the state for housing. We need to be able to make sure we can get that lower with the best sustainability.
With the IRA tax incentives, I can guarantee you that now is the time to invest in sustainability.
And that was my point earlier, and I agree with Deb. I feel like that we're slower. We need to have the scorecard in the onset. So, because I think from a developer's perspective, trying to do a project pro forma and not know all the costs that you might incur, being unknown in the cost is very detrimental for them. So I feel like that, we're a little slow to react and should have had this, much sooner than now. Again, to decrease the uncertainty that developers are planning for.
If I can ask how this IRA tax credit impacts the developers so that this could benefit them.
So there's tax credits available for increased, for installing solar, if they want to go for solar. There's tax incentives for energy efficiency, so if they want to install heat pumps, that sort of thing. I can provide the list of tax incentives if that helps.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is, how we move this forward in regards to timing wise and what the benefits are for the sustainable community that we all want to build. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on resolution 23-98?
One last question.
Go ahead.
Just interested in terms of as the scorecard is finalized and developed, how it will tie with the original Hopewell master plan.
Kelsey or Carrie, have you had experience with a site that already has a master plan in place, and how do you use that master plan to achieve your scorecard credits?
Kelsey, I don't know if you have, I would say that I've worked on projects that have had sustainability goals in place, maybe not a full master plan. And we certainly work with the team, with the community, if there are existing sustainability goals, to make sure that we're looking through that lens when we're looking at the scorecard and the credits that we would achieve.
Yeah, I have a similar experience, not necessarily a master plan, particularly in my neighborhood development experience, but I will say that it's also a great framework for when you are updating or adjusting your goals within your master plan down the line. Some of the conversations that we've had with Sean and her team and thinking about the future, using, potentially thinking about certifying certain areas, or, if it maybe is not feasible down the line for future developments, just using this as a really good tool for kind of almost like creating a checklist for the goals that you'd want to achieve on that higher scale. Like, they've already made this checklist, so we can use it as that tool.
Thank you.
Quick question in regards to, for Carrie and Kelsey and Sean. What's the time frame that it takes to put the preliminary scorecard together so that the developers that have already made presentations would know where they stand? Is this a 6-week, 1 month in order to get the preliminary out to them?
It's a really good question. I think it depends on, as long as we have, and this is kind of a collaborative, discussion here, who we would be working with, who we'd have access to as we're putting this together. I assume we'd be working with the city to develop the preliminary scorecard before turning it over to the developers. So as much information as you could give us at this time that reflects the site, as soon as we had that information, I would say we could turn that around in a couple of weeks. I would say probably a minimum of 3 weeks to really flesh this out. But we could do it on an expedited timeline, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to kind of jump in there as well, that part of our initial scope in the more general consulting role is familiarizing ourselves with city plans and goals and all the folks that we will interact with, and using those goals to make our best estimates of points that we think are feasible, or we think that you should push developers to look at X credit based on your goal of maybe you would like to have a certain amount of green space and you want to have make sure that it's publicly accessible and it has certain uses. That's something that we can push for within these credit categories, and work directly with developers to make sure that they understand that these are the goals of the city and this is how we are working to achieve them.
So if you look at the scorecard, we've already got some things going for us. So the housing types and affordability, that's going to give us 7 points right there. Connected and open community, this is in the heart of our city, so we're going to get a lot of these points automatically just because of where it's located.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Any comment from the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion on resolution 23-98.
Deb Hutton, I move to approve resolution 2399 as written.
98.
98, sorry. Oh, I got to look at the next one.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, and I'm gonna couple resolutions 23-99, 100, and 101. Who'd like to speak in regards to these?
I will, President Carney. Also want to recognize we have Matt Swinney on, our CDBG Physical Improvements Program Manager, in case he has any additional comment. But you got 3 resolutions in front of you. These are our 3 more 2023 Community Development Block Grant funding agreements for Bloomington Cooperative Living for a project at 410 West Kirkwood, a project for New Hope for Families located just south of here at their new facility that was built in the last couple of years, and then a funding agreement for Centerstone for 2 facilities on Rogers Street. These were part of our environmental review process that we've talked about with you a lot. I do want to mention in the resolution, you'll see new language in the resolutions on CDBG funding programs now that talks about the need for the environmental review and sort of getting ahead of that process a little bit more now for our subrecipients and the staff as we engage in these projects. And so that's what's before you for your consideration.
All right, any questions from commissioners on resolutions 99, 100, and 101?
Question on the ones dealing with the Centerstone projects in regards to it. When we're looking at fire protection, that's pretty much a capital improvement or a necessity for the fire department. But unless I'm wrong, and please correct me, the one particularly on Roger Street that is the main Centerstone building. And
The 221?
The 221. If I'm correct, that's on, no, it's the one on South Rogers. Excuse me. Make sure that's not the 221. I think 221 is the recovery center.
That's right.
Yeah, the recovery center. I'm not sure of the ownership, but the building itself is owned by the county.
At 645 South Rogers? Okay.
Yeah, it's owned by the county and leased to Centerstone. So my question, and I just was looking up to verify, because anytime we can help, we always try to, but when it was, the building itself is owned by the county. It's phenomenal. You know, we've all helped that. And then I was looking up Centerstone as a nonprofit multi-state entity with, you know, from the fiscal year of 2021, it was like $324 million. So while we want to help accordingly, I'm just curious from a cost standpoint at $184,000 that the RDC through the TIF has done. Have we already committed to it at this point through the CBDG?
This is the, yes. So these allocations were approved by the RDC last year, and we've been going through the environmental review process over the last year. So that, well, the money isn't RDC, the money is federal through the Community Development Block Grant Program. So these allocations were approved by the Redevelopment Commission and then the City Council, and now they're coming back to you on the funding agreement. So you have approved these previously.
So that's what I'm getting at, so, okay.
I'm on the physical, I represent us on the physical improvements group.
Okay.
And if Matt can correct me if I have it incorrect, but even though it's a national organization, or part of a national organization, we have one entity here.
Right.
They don't put any money into the physical building. Ours, so ours is, has to scrounge for physical help, capital.
In order to get a social, yeah.
Right.
And that
So
was part of it.
ours is lucky that we exist and are asking for the CBDG through us. So
Okay.
most of them have nothing to help them go along as physical buildings, practical buildings.
Okay, because I know we just redid the parking lot based on what our additional Hopewell was.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was looking at this from the physical standpoint and noted that, you know, the county does own the building, I was wondering in regards to, you know, is this a
Sure.
participatory, mutual governmental entity that could work together to save the dollars accordingly? But I think you just answered the question. My memory is not so good that I can tell you that I said okay a year ago. So consequently, you know, I don't have a good enough memory to tell you without referring back.
Well, these have taken a while. The environmental review process came in and sort of slowed things down a little bit, to be honest. And on physical improvements, the environmental reviews take much, much longer than the social services. And so that's why the social services were approved in a clump a while ago. And when we do this next round, hopefully later in the meeting, then the environmental reviews will take a shorter period of time. Again, for social services, for physical improvements, depending on the conditions, they can take quite a while.
Okay, and on these physical improvements that we're doing, we're taking consideration that we're giving out the dollars and we're relying on them to put it out in a, well, as I saw in some of the documents, that they meet our living wage requirements.
That's correct.
And that they do it in a multifaceted deal that gives the best participation for the best quality product.
Right, they're required to follow all federal regulation when they're doing these projects.
And this is a secondary basis that's coming back around, and it's already been through and approved.
That's correct. This is,
Okay, this is just the final.
Yeah, these are the funding agreements.
Thank you.
To get the project, and they can start the project then once we issue the notice to proceed.
I do have a clarification I'm asking for, given that Randy's raised that the building at 645 is, or South Rogers, is owned by the county. Is it typical that CDBG money would go to a tenant as opposed to the property owner?
It could. Matt, I'll defer to Matt Swinney if you have any comment there, Matt.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for a organization to lease a building and for them to be either responsible or able to do improvements to the building.
Okay.
With CDBG.
That's
money.
right.
Yes.
Especially for accessibility and things like that.
Okay, and fire safety.
That's
yeah.
one of the.
There's definitely been nonprofits that we've seen before that don't own their physical building.
Okay. And that's for the physical improvements as opposed to social
Correct.
services. Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
All right, any other questions on resolutions 23-99, 100, and 101 by commissioners? Any comment from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion on resolutions 23-99, 23-100, and 23-101.
Deborah Myerson will make a motion to approve the 3 amendments as stated, or the 3 resolutions as stated.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, moving on. Resolution 23-103, approval of amendment to lease agreement for 4th Street Garage commercial space.
Did 102 get thrown out?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Public policy.
No, my fault. I meant to say resolution 23-102, approval of agreement between City of Bloomington Redevelopment Commission and the Indiana University Public Policy Institute.
That's me. Hi, Dee Della Rosa, City of Bloomington, ESD. From September to October, we did the Tech Park recertification, and IU Public Policy Institute was kind enough to offer their services to us. We did have an agreement, and there were just some minor changes that needed to be made as far as like who the actual consultant was, how they wanted to do some of those things within the contract. So we've fixed those things, and we've also adjusted the dates as the IEDC did give us some extensions on that. So this is really just cleaning up some stuff so we can get the contract signed and move forward. So if you have any questions, you can let us know.
Everything got completed and you're happy with the
Everything
process?
is done.
Wonderful.
We should be hearing back from the IEDC sometime this month if they are still on track. But I will be checking in with them probably within the next week or so.
Was it a slight glitch, though, that it looked as if the IU Public Policy Institute as an entity within IU really did not have the authority to sign it, and really the IU Board of Trustees
Exactly.
is the signer.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's it, but it's fine to just be a clarification change there. That was
Yes.
okay. Good.
All right, any other questions from commissioners on resolution 23-102?
No.
Any comments from the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion on resolution 23-102.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-102 as presented.
Deb Hutton, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Next item is resolution 23-103, approval of amendment to lease agreement for 4th Street Garage commercial space. Who'd like to speak to us about this?
Yeah, I'll do this one too. So, essentially, what we are asking here is that the lease agreement that was created, I guess, at the end of last year. The start date for the initial term of the lease to begin actually on December 1st. The original agreement said that it was, and Colleen, you're going to have to give me the wording on that, what exactly it was.
So originally, the lease commencement date had a earlier of the two, which was the completion of the tenant improvements, or December 1st, 2023. Due to some issues with getting a delayed response as to when the tenant improvements were completed, we got a letter that was undated in July. We don't actually know when it was done, as well as the tenant not actually taking possession of the space until October. They had requested that we move it to December 1st and just clean up that language of that section of the lease. It is my understanding that they have been paying the rent as opposed to for the new space, for the temporary space that they were in this whole time, and so they just wanted a clarification on that. From a strategic standpoint, it just seemed easier to clean that up as opposed to try figuring out all of the other dates, given that there were several issues kind of with them moving into that space. Additionally, more of a cleaning up as well, the Department of Engineering had actually given that space an actual address, so we also added that into the exhibit so that it is tied to a street address as opposed to a very vague description of the two southern units next to this other unit, so now they have their own address as well.
Awesome. Any questions from commissioners on resolution 23-103?
Based on where we are, is there any significant fiscal impact to the city or the RDC?
Not as far as I can tell. I will be honest, I didn't have all of the numbers, so I didn't do the math myself, but I did, I looked at this as well as Larry Allen as well, and so that was just the suggestion of just from a cleaning up standpoint and ease of, I guess, paperwork.
So the underlying rent amounts to be received, et cetera, hasn't changed?
No. Correct. No, all of the numbers will stay the same, it's just when it starts.
It's just the term start time.
Yes. Correct.
Essentially, and an address, which is important.
Yes, and then technically you're still also going to get the full 5 years because the rent starts from the date of that as opposed to not. So you're not really losing months. It'll just be tacked on at the end.
On the back end.
Got it. All right, any other questions on resolution 23-103? Any comments from the public? I'll entertain a motion on resolution 23-103.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve 23-103 as presented.
Deborah Myerson, I'll second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, next item on the agenda is resolution 23-104, approval of CAC CDBG allocation recommendations. If you'd like to talk to us about this.
I'll start and want to say again, I've got Matt Swinney and then Cody Toothman, our Public Services Program Manager, and I also want to thank Commissioners Hutton and Myerson for their service on our Citizen Advisory Committees, which is what CAC stands for. So we've got for you tonight the 2024 CDBG allocations, so the next round. And just to outline a little bit of what the resolution says for the public, we are receiving approximately $856,000 in CDBG funds. That's approximate because we won't find out how much that money is until next year when congressional appropriations and other items are determined. And when that number is determined, we can use 15% of that for social services or public services, to 20% for administration, and then the remainder for our physical improvements. So that's why you see the discrepancy in what comes across for social services, which is a pretty modest amount at the end of the day, and then the rest being for physical improvements. So you'll see those amounts itemized in the resolution, and then the physical improvements are in the exhibit here. We are looking at awarding 6 organizations physical improvement dollars for various projects, totaling $556,314.20. And then on our public services or social services, we've got 7 organizations recommended for funding at around $17,000 to $19,000. They vary somewhat, as you can see. And that total would be $128,380.20. So Happy to take any questions. We do want to thank the members of our Citizen Advisory Committee, our subrecipients. Let me just take a minute if I may. We accelerated the timeline this year, and so that was for a couple of reasons. We have a new software program called Neighborly that we are working to incorporate a lot of this in. Hopefully, some of those who received the applications and reviewed them, rather, had some efficiency that they saw in that. I want to thank the staff because they got a lot of this together sooner. And then finally, our subrecipients, both those who applied and got money and those who applied and did not get a recommended funding amount. We want to get this accelerated so that we can start the environmental review process sooner. And we'll be recommending, after your consideration, if you do approve these recommendations, we're going to forward these to the City Council. And they'll probably hear those in January with the new council coming on. We don't think we can get it done by the end of the year, but doing it in January will be good. That usually happens in March, so we'll be 2 months ahead of schedule here if everything goes as we would like it to. So happy to answer any questions.
For the physical, do you have to wait until the City Council approves the physical improvement grants before you can assign environmental reviews for those places?
We can start. So we've actually already started with some scoping. The public service, social service are very quick. They take, I don't want to say, I mean, they can take a couple hours. And so they can be done sometimes in groups. As I mentioned earlier, the physical improvements, we ask for as much information about the project as soon as we can get it. We take it from the application, and they're communicating with our program manager on that, so we can start the process of scoping that out and determining what it might be. There are 4 different types of environmental reviews, and so try to get ahead of that as much ahead of that as we can, because there's the statutory notice deadlines.
Thanks.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Yeah, question in regards to when we hit our physical improvement and even our social service recommendations accordingly. Are these particular dollar amounts? At the present moment, we're approving what the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Commissions, recommended. Now, this has to go through 2 approval processes, one at the RDC and then one at the City Council.
That's yes.
Okay.
And then I have another answer for you, but
Yep.
So, and then the final step here is when HUD tells us what our exact dollar amount is, right? So when that happens, there's language in the in the decisions. Matt, I know there's always this case for physical improvements where if we get more than we thought, this will happen. If we get less than we thought, this will happen, because the amount is approximate, and so we don't know that exact number yet. So the final approval to get the project going will be after the environmental review is done, funding agreement, and somewhere in there, HUD will say, here's the exact amount you have, and we will distribute that accordingly across the projects.
And based upon what I saw here, the question I have on this is not so much, I mean, you know, Deb and Deborah, you guys represented us accordingly, so consequently, I would be remiss if I voted against something that we appointed you to do from an aspect. Is this something that the City Council could change allocations based on where their purview is?
They could,
Okay.
but this is all premised in our annual action plan process. The plans that we submit to HUD are based on a citizen participation plan. And part of that process is that they go through the redevelopment commission and then the City Council. So it's pretty rare. It could happen. But I think the council knows that there has been a participation. That's part of the idea of having a citizen advisory committee do this rather than staff or someone else. So they know it's been through a vetted process. I see a council member on now. But they know there's been a process that's had these projects vetted prior to them.
Yeah, which is greatly appreciated for people taking their time to do that. I just wanted to know, based on a recommendation, and it's in the resolution, that if, for whatever reason, members of the RDC wanted to have a discussion on that, or members of the City Council, that they could actually change it, not that we're going to or ever have, but that is an alternative, or an alternative if they feel the allocation wasn't correct.
These are recommendations, that's correct, and I wouldn't want to speak for either the RDC or the City Council.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just clarify, there is language in each of the agreements that it's not so much about the prerogative to change the funding, but because the current numbers that are in there are not the final numbers that would be pending, there's, you know, if more comes in, this is what we do with it. If there's less come in, this is what we do with this, and there's language in both of the exhibits that describe that.
Saw that. That's very, very helpful. because then you know everybody gets an equal share based upon what it is.
Right.
It's the right way to do it.
Not necessarily an equal share.
Yeah, it's based on.
It's very particular to.
Yeah, it's very specific
what
in
was
terms
handed
of
up now, and
describing
what could
what's
be
in
more
there.
or could be less.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Meyerson and Hutton for participating. I've participated in these in the past, and it's a really rewarding process. It's very thorough, a lot of great discussion. Yeah, it is tough, very tough. But any other questions from commissioners? Any comment from the public? If
I just
not,
wanted to say I'm glad that we have the opportunity to share these resources with the community.
yeah,
You bet.
absolutely. I'll entertain a motion on resolution 23-104.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-104 as presented.
Deb Hutton, I'll second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda, is there any general business for tonight?
Just a reminder, RDC, that our last meeting of the year is December 18th at 5 p.m., so I hope you're all able to attend. That will be our final session for the year.
All right, thank
Barring
you.
anything else that would come up that would require a special one. But,
Any other general discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Deb
All
Hutton.
right, good night, everyone. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.